Hi everyone, it's 12:18 on Sunday and I'm doing the last video for for lecture 1. There isn't a whole lot more to talk about, so hopefully you finished your analysis of the letters that you picked, and the last concepts I want to tie into the Turner case are from chapter 3. Excuse me, I took down the chapter 4 notes you may have seen that were here. I'm going to stop at chapter 3. So chapter 3 in our book talks about culture, and culture is made up of the ideas and values and the different symbols that a culture has. And when we talk about culture, one of the things that all cultures have are values, and values are the ideals of the culture, kind of what the culture thinks of as being right and wrong. And our values in our culture are conflicted about women's sexuality. So on the one hand, it's, we tend to want women to be sexy. We tend to make part of women's value be their sexual attractiveness. So we value youth and beauty, and women being thin and having the certain kind of figure that's valued in our culture. But at the same time, if women are too sexual or enjoy sex too much, or have sex with too many people, or then we kind of go the other way. So it's like we want them to be sexy, but we also want them to be virtuous, which is kind of a difficult thing for women to do. And then another value in our culture is that wealthy white men are valued differently than poor men of color. So we know that in what we see in the Turner case, it would be handled very differently if Brock Turner were, poor and Hispanic, and that we tend to place a higher value. And we can see this value manifest when we look at, for example, arrest rates for marijuana. And we know that whites and blacks use marijuana at the same rate, and whites are actually more likely to deal marijuana. But if you look at the arrest rates, they're much higher for African Americans and other minorities. And if you get arrested, there's racial disparities in the charge that you'll get. There's racial disparities in whether or not you're found guilty, and then if you are found guilty, there's racial disparities in the sentencing. And that's one of the ways our values manifest. So values are the ideals, the things that we believe in. And then part of what societies do is take these values and turn them into rules. Right? And rules are what we call norms. And norm, this is where the word normal comes from. And in sociology, norms and normal don't mean right? They just mean what's the norm, right? What do most people do? What's the society's rule? And norms are interesting because they can be kind of, again, we can have the ideal versus the real. So like when we look at speeding, we have the ideal norm is that everyone drives safely, and we know that it's safer to drive at a slower speed. It's safer to not tailgate. It's safer to not talk on your cell phone. It's safer to not text. I don't even know how people text and drive. I see people doing it. Because you see those people weaving around, and then you pull up and they're like literally using their thumb to send someone a text. And we do these things, we say these things. So our ideal norms are we don't do these things, and we actually sometimes we take norms and we formalize them by making them laws. So that's the ideal, but then the reality is everybody speeds, right? And sometimes when I'm feeling particularly misanthropic and angry at the world, I'll take my car, which I have a minivan, which I really like. I got a year ago. I've always wanted a minivan. I don't know why. So I think I'm the only one who lives in the city limits with a minivan. So it's normally a suburban thing. So I'll take my minivan and I'll get in the right-hand lane and I'll set my, the thing. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say speed control. I know you're thinking the word, right? I wish you could yell it to me. Cruise control. I set my cruise control to like 57, and I just watch people pull up behind me in my rearview mirror and get up on my tail and then jerk around me. And it'll just happen the whole way home. People pull up behind me, jerk around me, pull up behind me, jerk around me. And I just find it really amusing that people are like angry at me because they want me to get out of their way so that they can break the law, right? Because that's basically what's happening, right? It's like you want to break the law and you want me out of your way. And I generally try not to speed because I don't want a ticket. I just don't want to. I don't want to be pulled over by the police. And the other day I was running late going out to South University, which is really far from me because I live close to downtown and it's a short pump. I was running late because my husband didn't get home, and so I, got in the left lane and just floored it. And I could certainly see it's like really fun, but it's really dangerous and it's risky, and people do risky things, and so I tend to not speed, and that's definitely not the norm. So, but the ideal is that we don't speed, and so you have these police cars that drive up and down the highway, and they're like these bubbles of well-behaved people around them. I used to have a lot of friends when I was when I was living in New York and working on the World Trade Center disaster. There were a lot of police officers at the medical examiner's office where I worked who were also helping, and they would just laugh about what it's like to drive a police cruiser around, and everybody's like, oh yeah, look at me obeying the law. And they also drive around in non-police vehicles, so they know how everybody really drives, right? But it's like we all behave because mom comes into the room. So we have values and we have norms, and we kind of we kind of don't always follow our ideals. And it's really true about talking on the cell phone, because we've had enough kind of education about drunk driving that we tend to look down on drunk driving, and we don't tend to laugh about it and think it's funny. But talking on a cell phone is roughly equivalent to drunk driving, and most of us are willing to do that and to put other people at risk because we want to make a phone call in the car. And so even though we have this norm that you should be a safe driver, we also violate the norm. And if you think about how you would feel if you hit someone's car and their child died because of the accident, and how you would feel if you'd been ordering pizza on the way home, but we think that the risk is I don't know, we just don't feel the risk that might happen. So we tend to do the short-term pleasure rather than the long-term responsible thing to do. So in terms of the Turner case, the norms in college are often about drinking, right? And there's lots of alcohol, lots of sex, lots of people, there's often a party culture. And so the kind of norms are show values that are different when you're not living on a campus. And it just came out. I don't know if anybody saw the news yesterday that Brock Turner sent out photographs of the victims' breasts. And so this idea that he, was kind of this young, innocent person from, Ohio, who's just like, wow, and didn't know, thought he was doing something consensual, is kind of falling apart as people are coming forward in Ohio and talking about what, a party animal he was, and what a racist he was, and that he was, excuse me, that he was very cruel to people who were gay, and that he took pictures of the woman as he was assaulting her, are coming out, which is not good. But anyway, so sanctions. So then we have sanctions, and sanctions are what happen when you violate norms. And the dominant culture, which is, we talk about the dominant culture, which is kind of mainstream culture. And I talked before about how in dominant culture, when I'm saying that, people who are of different races and different socioeconomic classes are treated different in the criminal justice system, and the criminal justice system is part of dominant culture. So he's being treated differently because of his positive position in the dominant culture. And the dominant culture tends to be the culture that gets to make the norms, right? The people, we'll be talking more about this idea of conflict theory, which looks at the battle kind of between the haves and the have-nots, and the people in power get to make the rules and get to decide what the rules are, and the rules tend to be in their favor, which is why we don't tend to pay a lot of attention to white-collar crime, because white-collar crime is committed by people at the top, and so it doesn't benefit them for us to focus on it or see it as particularly deviant, or go after it the way we go after breaking and entering. So anyway, so those are some of the terms from chapter 3, and we'll be talking more about them in lecture 2. So a couple just administrative things. Oh God, I can't wait to get better. So if you've noticed on the menu in Blackboard, there's a new link that says take quizzes, and these are the extra credit quizzes that I was talking about. And there are 9 of them because we're going to cover 9 chapters. I think we'll probably cover 3 chapters and then have an exam. So there's 3 of them. So the first exam will cover chapters 1, 2, and 3. So my advice would be to take the quizzes for chapters 1, 2, and 3 while we're going through the first lectures. And the way that the quizzes work is that the publisher of the textbook created a test bank of, it's roughly 100 questions for each chapter. And I took those questions and imported them into Blackboard and created a series of quizzes. And the quizzes are all set up exactly the same. So when you go into the quizzes link and you click on take the quiz, it'll pull up a quiz. It'll first ask you, are you ready? Are you sure you're ready to take it? You say yes. Then it'll pull 20 questions out of that test bank, and it'll present them to you. They're multiple choice, true, false questions. And you'll have 90 minutes to answer 20 questions. You can use your book. You can use whatever you want to answer the questions. And then a lot of our book is on Quizlet. If you have used Quizlet before, they have like flashcards, and our book is on Quizlet. You can go to Quizlet and use it to review the concepts from our chapter if you're interested. And so you pull up 20 questions, you answer the questions, you submit it, and right away you'll get a score. And each question is worth half a point, so there's 10 possible points. And your goal is to get a 9 or higher. And if you get a 9 or higher, then you'll get a point added to your final grade at the end of the term, up to 9 points, right? So that's 9, that's a lot, right? That'll take you from a C to an A, if you, well, no, a C to a B if you play it right. So if you don't get a 9 or higher, then you can choose to take the quiz again. And you'll go in, you'll do the same thing, and it'll pull another set of 20 questions from the test bank. It's not the same 20 questions. It's a different set. You may see some of the same questions, but it's a different set. It's a random set of 20 questions. You answer those 20 questions, you submit it for grading, and you see what your grade is. And then the highest grade counts. So if your first test was you got an 8 and then you get a 6, the 8 still counts. And you can do it as many times as you want into infinity. So the you know, some people, you know, take the quizzes like 10, 12 times. It's totally up to you. But this will help reinforce the concepts from the chapter, which will help you when you go to take the exam. And it's also a way to get extra credit on your final grade and just a good review. So those are available now. And the other thing is about grading. So I'm kind of going in, you may see behind you, and doing some grading. And, you know, my probably on at some point next week, I'll start, you know, setting down some deadlines. And what I'll probably do with the deadlines is that if I, at a certain deadline, I'll grade all the work for the assignment. And if you want to turn the work in late, that's fine, you can, but I won't grade it until the end of the term. So we'll, I'll talk more about that next week. So let's see. So that's it. That's lecture 1. And we'll be doing 2 lectures a week. So this lecture, I think, is about 2 hours. And then has work in it. So, you know, like I said, you should be spending at least 5 hours a week on the class, because that's what we would be spending just on lecture if we were meeting in the classroom, because we're doing it double time. So that's what you should be aiming for. And then sometime, an hour or 2 for work and reading. So, okay. All right. That's the end. And I'll see you in the next lecture.